Are you ready for a pixie book? Come on and listen in! With stories full of wonder, it's time now to begin. Oh, thank you for the ride, Storybook. Oh, hello, children. Are you ready for a story? So are we. Oh, the farmer's story. Once upon a time, there lived a farmer who worked a small plot of land with his wife and young son named Josh. Now, this was in the old days when horses helped till the soil. The farmer had a working horse named Charlie. He was strong and sturdy. Josh's morning chore was to gather hay soggy from the morning dew and carry it over to Charlie, who loved soggy hay. He would eat it all in seconds. Nom, 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 nom. Josh's nightly chore was to go to Charlie's stall and brush him. He would clean his coat from all the mud and dirt. And when Charlie was nice and clean, Josh would gently pat Charlie on the nose, wish him a good night, and close the stall behind him. One morning, as Josh arrived at Charlie's stall with a fresh heaping of breakfast hay, he stopped, dropped the bucket, and let out a scream. The farmer heard the scream and ran over to Josh. "What happened, son?" Josh pointed at Charlie's stall with tears flowing from his eyes. The stall door was open, and Charlie was gone. The family searched the area for hours, calling out to Charlie, but he was nowhere to be found. That night, as the farmer sat beside Josh on his bed, Josh was still weeping. "What are we going to do? Oh, this is so terrible." The farmer hugged his son, smiled, and said, "Ah, son, things happen for the best. And the best thing to always do is give thanks for what you have right now." Josh heard his father's words. Well, I'm thankful that you're my father," he said, as he slowly closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next morning, Josh woke up to a familiar sound. It was Charlie neighing outside his window. Oh, but wait, whose neigh is that? And that! And that! Josh ran out of the house to discover Charlie happily bucking about with a whole herd of horses. The farmer and his wife joined Josh and joyously stood watching the horses at play. That was a very busy day. The family had to make room for the new horses. They could sell a few to make money to build a bigger barn for the new horses. There was a lot of excitement on the farm. That night, as the farmer sat beside Josh on his bed, Josh smiled at his father and said, "We're so lucky. Isn't it wonderful?" The farmer smiled and replied, "Yes, things happen for the best." Josh smiled back and said, "I'm thankful for you and Mama and for the new horses." A week passed, and one day the farmer was taming one of the new horses. The new horse wasn't used to being told what to do and gave the farmer a kick in the shoulder. The farmer had to go to the hospital for a week. Finally, the farmer was able to come home, but was still bandaged up and wasn't able to work. That night, Josh came to sit by his father's bedside. Josh was sad and said, "Look at you. What bad luck." "Remember," replied the father, "things happen for the best." Josh gave it a thought and smiled. I'm so thankful you're home." The next morning, the family was awakened by loud banging on the door. They all got up and came to the door together. When they opened it, they were surprised to see a number of soldiers standing there. The soldiers looked at the farmer and said, "A war broke out. We're here to recruit you to the king's army." Josh's heart sank. He couldn't even imagine his father going away to war. But before he had time to say anything, the farmer smiled and said, "I'm sorry, but as you can see, I couldn't help you even if I tried." The soldiers saw his wounded shoulder, nodded, and left. When they closed the door, Josh hugged his father. "Oh, we're so lucky. If you'd been healthy, they'd take you off to war." The farmer smiled. Like I said, things happen for the best. All we can do is give thanks for what we have right now. And the family lived happily and thankfully ever after. The end. Oh, I'm so thankful for that story. That was truly the best. And now, bye-bye. Did you like the story? Then click like. Aha! Hello, children. And now, behold, abracadabra. Ha! Hello, storybook. Children, do you believe in magic? Oh, well, I'm sure you will. Especially with this magical tale. Jack and the Beanstalk. Once upon a time, out in the countryside, there stood a small old house. That is where Jack and his mother lived. They were quite poor, and worse still, Jack's mother was quite ill. Oh, Jack loved his mother and was always willing to do whatever needed to be done to help her. Their only possession was an old milk cow. Every morning, Jack would milk it and then set off to the market, where he would sell the milk to make just enough money for their daily bread. One morning, as Jack went to milk the cow, no milk came out. He tried again. And again, oh no, but there wasn't even a drop. Jack ran to his mother and told her, "Oh, I was afraid this day would come," she whispered. "Oh, we have no other choice but to sell our cow at the market." Jack hugged his mother. "Don't you worry." He untied the cow and led it onto the path towards the market. Jack and the cow had only walked a short distance when Jack saw a bright light out of the corner of his eye. He turned and saw a smiling old woman wearing a brightly colored gown. "Oh, yes. Hello there. What a lovely cow. Would you like to trade for it?" "Huh? I'm actually on my way to sell her right now." "Oh, well, how about I give you a sack of magic beans for her?" "Huh? Magic beans?" Jack giggled. "Well, there's no such thing." "Ooh, magic is everywhere. Perhaps these magic beans will lead you to your much-deserved riches." "Huh? Riches? I just hope Mother and I will have enough to eat." The old woman smiled. "It's when we help others that we are the richest, isn't it? And you are always very helpful." Jack thought it over. "Okay then, let's trade." Jack took the sack and turned towards his home when he suddenly had a change of heart and decided to ask the woman for the cow back. But when he turned around, they were gone. "Oh no, what have I done?" When he got back home, Jack told his mother what had happened. His mother's eyes closed and a tear dropped to the ground. Oh, Jack. Jack knew he had made a terrible mistake and decided to get their cow back. He ran out the door, but after a few steps he tripped and fell. The beans flew out of the sack and landed on the ground. To his surprise, the beans began to sprout, becoming a vine that grew and grew and grew up towards the heavens. Jack couldn't believe his eyes. They really were magic beans. Perhaps if I climb the vine, I'll find the riches the old woman talked about. So he climbed up the beanstalk. He climbed and climbed and climbed until he reached the clouds. When Jack reached the top of the beanstalk, he stepped onto a cloud. He then saw a huge castle in the distance and quickly made his way towards it. Who lives there? He wondered. Just then, the ground shook, and Jack saw a huge giant coming toward him. Wait, Jack noticed that he was crying. The giant suddenly stopped and almost sat on top of Jack. Luckily, he leapt out of the way just in time. The giant held his finger. Ho, 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 ho. Fee, fi, fo, sob. I can't make my fingers stop to throb. Jack slowly approached the giant and called out, "Excuse me, are you all right?" The giant sniffled. "No, I'm not all right. Oh, wait, who's asking?" "It's me, Jack." Oh? The giant squinted his eyes and finally saw Jack standing beside him. He was so small. "Oh, hello, Jack. It's nice to meet you, even though I'm not in the best of moods. Oh, I got a splinter stuck in my finger. Oh, it's so small, but it hurts so much. Oh." Jack thought for a moment. "Well, maybe I can help you get it out." Oh, that would be so nice of you." The giant gently placed his finger in front of Jack. The splinter was the size of Jack's whole arm. He grabbed it and said, "Okay, I'll pull it out on the count of 3. Ready?" "Ready," said the giant as he closed his eyes and clenched his teeth. 3, 2, and before he reached 1, Jack pulled the splinter right out. Oh, what a relief! Fee, fi, fo, thank you. Is there anything I can do to help you?" "Well, truth is..." And Jack told the giant the story of his sickly mother, the cow, and how he had found his way up to the clouds. Well, you seem like quite the nice little person. I think I might have just a thing. I have a flock of lovely geese, and they lay the tastiest eggs. Well, I'd be happy to offer you one of my geese." "Oh, that would be wonderful. I'll make Mother omelets for breakfast, and I'll sell eggs at the market and have enough for our daily bread." Well, the giant stood up and ran off with loud thumps, and soon returned with a goose in his paw. Jack took hold of the goose, thanked the giant, and they parted ways. Jack carefully made his way down the beanstalk. When he finally reached the ground, he gently put the goose down and looked over at his little house. Oh, he had never been happier to see it. He then turned towards the beanstalk, but to his surprise, it had disappeared. Just then, the goose let out a honk and laid an egg. Jack noticed the egg was golden and shiny. He then picked picked it up. Oh, it was heavy and solid. Wait, is this egg? Yes, the egg was made of pure gold. Soon Jack and his mother were the richest in the land. Mother healed from all her ailments, and together with Jack, helped others in many wonderful ways. And they lived happily and magically ever after. The end. What a magical story! Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. If you want to hear all of the Pixie books, make sure you click unsubscribe. Oh, hello, children. Oh, Storybook and I have a classic tale to tell. Are you ready? Oh, wonderful. So are we. The story of Cinderella. Once upon a time, there was a rich merchant whose wife fell ill. As she felt her end drawing near, she called to her beautiful daughter, "Oh, my dearest, always be kind and good, and trust that things will work out. Take this locket and keep it close. It will protect you." Years passed, and the merchant remarried. His new bride and her 2 daughters came to live with the merchant and his daughter. The merchant was often away on business and entrusted his daughter's care to his new wife. Little did he know that his new wife and stepdaughters were very mean to his daughter. The stepsisters mocked her, while the stepmother forced her to attend to all their needs from morning till night. They even forced her to sleep on a pile of cinders, which stuck to her hair and clothing, and so they named her Cinderella. Poor Cinderella spent her days laboring away. Late at night, she would secretly take out her beloved mother's locket, which she kept in a secret pocket. She would open it and gaze lovingly at her mother's worn-out portrait and cry herself to sleep. One day, the king's messenger arrived and regally announced, "Hear ye, hear ye! The prince is ready to be wed! All maidens are summoned to a special ball at the castle, where the prince, by the midnight hour, will choose his bride." The 2 stepdaughters cried out with excitement, "Oh, I'm sure he'll choose me to be his bride." "You?" the other sister mocked. "Only if he's blind, he's sure to pick me." The stepmother interrupted. "He won't choose either of you if you don't go and prepare yourselves. Hurry now, there's much to be done. Cinderella, don't just stand there like a stump. Prepare their baths and bring out their new dresses. Move it!" The sisters barked out orders while their mother oversaw it all, making sure that her daughters were fit for a prince. Finally, they all stood at the doorway ready to leave when Cinderella whispered, "Can I go too, please?" "You? Go to the ball? Oh, we'd be the laughing stock of the kingdom. No, Cinderella, attend to your chores." And with that, the stepmother slammed the door. Cinderella dropped to her knees and burst out crying. Tears streamed down her dusty cheeks and down onto her ragged dress. One tear made it all the way to her mother's locket. The locket began to shake, buzzing with energy. Startled, Cinderella slowly took it out. The locket glowed brightly. Suddenly, it opened, and swirls of twinkling light danced about the room until finally a smiling old woman wearing a sparkling dress magically appeared. "Oh, hello, Cinderella. I am your guardian angel." Cinderella was shocked. But how? No time to explain. You have a ball to attend." And with a wave of her hands, rainbow sparkles swirled around Cinderella, transforming her appearance from head to toe.
Ooh, not bad. Take a look in the mirror. Cinderella looked and was amazed, especially by the crystal slippers she now wore. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. That's what guardian angels are for. And now, there's only one little thing. The magic will wear off by the last chime of midnight. Now, go and have yourself a ball. A short time later, Cinderella arrived at the ball. When the grand doors opened before her, she stood in awe of all the splendor. Everyone immediately caught sight of her radiant beauty, and especially the prince, whose heart skipped a beat. He approached. "It would be such an honor to dance with you." Cinderella blushed, curtsied, and replied, "The honor would be mine." The prince danced with Cinderella all through the night, deeply moved not only by her beautiful appearance, but even more so captivated by the light shining in her eyes. Finally, the music stopped, and the king stood up and called for attention. "The midnight hour is upon us." Cinderella looked at the clock, which began to chime, and gasped, "Son, have you made your choice?" "I have, father," said the prince. He then turned towards Cinderella, shocked to discover that she was gone. He saw her rushing out the door. "Stop!" he cried, and rushed after her. By the time he reached the steps of the castle, she was nowhere to be found. He then noticed something twinkling on the ground. It was her crystal slipper, which had slipped off her foot as she ran off. The next day, the prince set out with a small entourage to find his lost love. He went from door to door, having every maiden try on the crystal slipper. When he arrived at Cinderella's home, he was greeted by the stepmother and her two daughters. The first sister shoved her foot forcefully, even banging it into the wall, but as hard as she tried, it was too small. The other sister, realizing that the slipper was too big, tried to secretly stuff it with a silk cloth, but was caught in the act. The prince let out a sigh and walked out the door. However, one of the prince's aides caught sight of a woman clearing cinders out of the fireplace. "You there? It was proclaimed that every maiden is to try on the slipper. Come on!" Cinderella stepped forward shyly and slipped her foot gracefully into the slipper, which fit perfectly. Everyone gasped. The aide called out to the prince, "My lord, we found her!" The prince rushed back into the room and stood before Cinderella, and despite all the dust and grime, recognized the light shining in her eyes. To the great shock of the stepmother and sisters, the prince kneeled before Cinderella and asked for her hand in marriage. Cinderella felt the locket softly shake in her pocket. She smiled and said yes, and they lived happily ever after. The end. Don't you just love a good love story? Okay then, see you next time. Bye-bye. Hello there, children. Do you wish to hear a story? Here's a wonderful story about wishes. Once upon a time, there was an old fisherman. He lived with his wife in a small broken hut by the sea, in the middle of pretty much nowhere. They were very poor. Every day, the fisherman would go out to the sea and wait for the tide to come so he could find fish to bring back home for dinner. One day, as the fisherman sat by the sea, he felt a sudden pull at his line. The fisherman carefully pulled it out of the water, expecting to see an ordinary fish. But what he pulled out was no ordinary fish. Oh no, you see, it was a gold flounder. Do you know what a flounder is? I'll spare you the Google search. A flounder is a flat fish that lives at the bottom of the ocean, and this flounder was shimmering gold with blue sparkling eyes. Truly a beautiful thing. The fisherman was quite surprised, but he was even more surprised when the fish started speaking. "Dear fisherman," said the gold flounder, "let me go, please. I'm an enchanted prince, and if you release me, I'll grant you 3 wishes." The fisherman didn't want to return home empty-handed, but he felt sorry for the fish and let him go. Splash! He landed back in the water. "Oh, thank you, dear fisherman. Now, what is your first wish?" The fisherman thought, "My dear wife is always complaining about our run-down hut. Well, now there's a chance to fix it. Well, if you could, I'd like you to fix my home. It's broken, small, and dirty. If you don't mind, that's my wish." The gold flounder nodded. "Very well, it's done. You can go back to your home, dear fisherman. Thank you for sparing my life." When the fisherman got back home, he couldn't believe his eyes. His wife was standing at the door of a brand new cottage with a red roof and green windows. She was very happy. "Oh, dear husband, how did it happen?" The fisherman told her exactly what happened. When he finished, she told him, "If the magical fish could give us this cottage, why not ask for a bigger house with gardens and a car in the driveway?" The fisherman was confused. "Dear, we were given this cottage as a gift, as our first wish. I don't want to anger the magical fish. Why can't we just be satisfied with this house?" "No, husband. Tomorrow you go back to the sea and ask for a bigger house. You saved this prince's life. For sure he won't mind." And so the next day, the fisherman went back to the sea, and when came the tide, so did the flounder. "Dear flounder," he said, "I'm sorry to bother you, but my wife, well, she'd like a bigger house." The flounder nodded. "All right, dear fisherman, that's your second wish." The fisherman walked back to the house, and guess what? Yes, where a cottage once was, now stood a big stone house, surrounded by gardens and a driveway with a brand new car. But his wife was not done yet. "If the fish could grant us this big house, why not ask for a castle with tall towers and 100 rooms, servants and guards and limousines?" "Oh, but my dear wife," said the fisherman, upset, "we already asked for a bigger house, and the fish was nice enough to give us one. We don't need such a grand castle." His wife shook her head. "Go back and ask for a castle." And so the next day he waited for the tide by the sea. "Oh, dear flounder, I'm sorry to bother you again, but my wife wants to be the queen of a castle." The flounder nodded. When the fisherman returned, tuxedo-wearing servants greeted him and escorted him onto a huge driveway with sports cars and limousines. Then into a giant castle with the roof made of gold, cooks, and many gardens. His wife sat on a big throne with a golden crown upon her head. "Well, you must be happy now," he said to her. But oh no. "If the fish could give us this castle..." "What could possibly be bigger than a castle? Well, you already have it all, and we were only given 3 wishes." She shook her head. "Nonsense! I am now the queen, and the fish must do as I command.
Get him here to live with us as my servant." The fisherman tried to argue, but there was no point. The next day, with a heavy heart, he went back to the sea and sat by the water sad. "Dear magic fish, I'm sorry, but my wife, the queen, wishes that you come live with us and grant her all the wishes she might have forever." The fish stared at the fisherman for a few moments and simply said, "Go home." He dove back into the water and was never seen again. The fisherman went back home, but when he arrived, the castle was gone. No cars or servants or gold-coated doors. Instead, he found his wife sitting on the ground, no crown in sight, next to their old broken hut. "Come, my dear, let's go back home." And so they did, and they lived there together, poor but grateful for each other. The end. Oh, what a magical tale! Say, children, if you met the gold magical flounder and were granted a wish, what would you wish for? Well, take your time and think about it. Bye-bye for now.
Did you like the story? Then click like.
Hello there, children. It's time for another wonderful story. Oh, Storybook, good to see you again. Oh, that's a good one. Storybook, thank you. It's called The Frog Prince. Once upon a time, in a kingdom far away, there lived a king and a queen and their daughter, the princess, a charming young woman. On her birthday, her royal parents gave her a gift. No, not a drone. Drones didn't exist back then. It was a ball, a golden ball, beautiful and smooth, made with real gold in it. It magically went up high in the sky when she threw it, and shimmered under the sunlight. Oh, how much the princess loved that ball. She played with it every single day with her friends. One day, quite a gloomy day actually, the princess went outside as usual to play ball with her friends. They played and played for hours, up until the ball was thrown too high up and fell far away, too far for the players to even see. The princess rushed to search for it. She searched and searched, strong wind blowing in her face and dark clouds gathering above her. And then she saw it! On the edge of a pond, there it was! But oh no, the wind was cruel to the princess that day. It blew the ball over the edge and bloop! Into the pond it went, sinking to the bottom. After all, gold is heavy. The princess was so upset, and for a good reason. Her parents gifted her this beautiful golden ball, and she loved it so, and now it was on the bottom of this dirty pond. She feared she would never see it again. She stood there near the pond and cried, "Oh, what will be of my beloved golden ball? How will I tell my parents I lost their precious gift? Oh my!" Suddenly, she heard a splashing sound when a little frog's head appeared above the water, staring at the princess. And then it spoke. "Hello, princess. Why are you crying?" The princess was shocked. You can speak, but you're a frog." The frog nodded. "Yes, and you're a princess. But why are you crying?" The princess, sniffling and rubbing her eyes, told the frog about her precious ball. The frog paused for a moment, scratching his slimy little chin with a slimy little hand. Well, if I go down under and retrieve your precious ball for you..." The princess's eyes lit up. "I'd give you anything. Please, please do it." "Is that so?" said the frog. "Look, it's awfully cold and dirty here, and quite hard to find food or shelter. If I get you your ball back, will you let me into the castle you live in, and let me eat dinner with you?" The princess immediately nodded her head, her hair getting wet from the rain that began falling down. Yes, I will. Yes, please, please," she said, not really thinking it through. "Well then, here I go," the frog called out, diving down the pond into its dirty water. The princess was pacing around the pond impatiently while long minutes passed by. Then, suddenly, his head appeared out of the water, and soon after, his hands holding her precious golden ball. He swam to her, placed the wet ball into her waiting arms. "There you go, princess. Now But the princess didn't even listen. She ran, laughing back to her friends with so much joy, not even thinking about the little frog that was left behind. Hours passed. Then came the evening. The princess was getting ready to sit by the dinner table with the king and queen, her precious ball still in her arms, now cleaned, as shiny as ever. She was thanking the servant for pulling out the chair for her when she heard a gentle knock on the nearby window. She looked over, her eyes widening. The frog from the pond. Quickly she ran over, opened the window, and let the little frog jump on the window seat. He was dripping mud, scratched and exhausted. The princess immediately apologized. "Oh, dear frog, I'm so sorry. I completely forgot. I left you there in the rain and storm." She turned to her parents, who were looking at her surprised and concerned. "Mother, Father, this frog here is a friend of mine. He helped me today, and in return, I promised he could come eat dinner at our table. Can he, please?" The king and queen exchanged a shocked look. The king said, "What? A dirty little frog from outside? Why on earth would we let it in?" The princess ran over to her father, pleading, "Oh, please, father, I promised." "Yuck! No!" said the queen, clearly disgusted. "There is no way that thing sits at our dinner table. Are you insane? This is a dirty, wild creature." The princess cried and pleaded, but there was no use. Her parents would not have it. She took a big coat and went outside, meeting the frog on a nearby bench by the window. "Oh, I'm so sorry, my dear friend," she said to him. The frog jumped onto the bench and sat close beside her, his head shaking. "Oh, I was so excited to spend the evening inside, away from this rain and the cold, and this dirty, awful pond. I'm so hungry and tired. The journey up here to the castle was very hard." The princess listened closely. Her heart truly went out for the little frog. "Poor little thing," she said, bending down, wiped a chunk of mud off his slimy cheek, and gave it a small kiss. For a quick moment, the only thing she saw was gold fog appearing out of nowhere, and then it was all around the little frog, covering him up. And when the fog cleared, there was no frog on the bench beside her, but a young man. The princess was at a loss for words. "What? How? She stuttered in shock. The young man smiled at her and said, "I didn't mean to frighten you, princess. I'm sorry. The truth is, I wasn't actually a frog. I'm a prince, and I was cursed years ago by an evil sorcerer," he said quietly, lowering his head. "I'm sorry, I didn't tell you before. I was so ashamed." The princess shook her head. "No, don't be sorry, but how did you turn back into a prince?" and the prince told her how the only way to break the curse was an act of pure kindness from a princess. And you did exactly that, without knowing who I really am, the prince said to her, smiling. The king and queen were very confused when their daughter went back inside, accompanied by a prince, whom they gladly invited to dinner. The prince and princess became good friends and grew closer every day, and a year later married in a ceremony by that same pond and lived happily ever after. Oh, what a beautiful tale! Well, children, being truly kind to others can lead you to great things and bring wonderful transformation. Don't you think? Bye-bye for now.
If you like our stories, don't forget to
Oh,
subscribe.
hello there, children. Let's hop on to another great tale together. Oh, hello to you as well, Storybook. What have you got for us today? Oh, the ant and the grasshopper. Oh, how wonderful. Let's begin. It was during the summer days when birds were flying over clear blue skies. The sun was shining on fields of grass and flowers, and the air was warm. Resting with his back to a tree trunk was a grasshopper, lying around lazily. He would spend his summer days singing and dancing without a care in the world, just having a good time. Every day, he would watch a tiny ant carrying around foods. Not burgers and fries, though. She carried seeds and other ant foods from all around the fields to her home. Busy and persistent, she would work hard from dawn till sunset, carrying food to her home, not wasting any time. Quite a few times, he stopped her on her way as she was walking, carrying a seed that is twice her size, heavy on her back, and said, Little ant, why are you working so hard? Come join me in my dance. Look how beautiful it is around us. And the ant, breathing heavily from effort, replied, Oh, no, sorry, Grasshopper. I must bring food to my home. There's no time to waste. And she would walk away, and the grasshopper would stay there, shrug his shoulders, and go back to doing nothing all day. One day, as the grasshopper once again stopped the ant in her tracks and tried to convince her to join him in his lazy fun, she put down the seed on the ground with a big thump and said, Sorry, Grasshopper, I can't. I need to make sure this seed gets in my home before nighttime. But why? The grasshopper wondered. You go around working so hard every day. Why do you need so much food? Well, you're such a tiny ant. Because when winter comes, my friend, this food will feed me through it, when everything here will be covered in snow. The grasshopper laughed. Winter? Winter won't come for 1,000,000 days. How silly. Working so hard every summer day for a winter that is so far away. But the ant paid him no mind. She shook her head, picked up the seed, and continued on her journey, collecting food for the winter time. And the grasshopper would laugh at her from afar, leaning on the tree trunk, singing songs to himself. This went on for days and weeks and months. The ant working hard and collecting food, and the grasshopper hanging around doing nothing but sing and dance. But alas, winter did come. The days were shorter. The skies turned gray with thunderclouds, the ground wet from the rain, whilst the ant was cozy and comfortable in her home, with plenty of food to last her all season. But the grasshopper had it much worse. Cold, hungry, and alone, he searched and searched for food, but couldn't find any. He became more worried every day that passed. And when snow began falling and covering the ground, he lost his place to sleep, too. He wandered around, exhausted, until he came upon the ant's home. Weary and weak, he knocked on the door. She opened it, and behind her he could see a warm fire crackling in the fireplace, sheltered from the snow and the rain. "Dear Aunt," he said to her, shaking in the cold air, "I'm hungry and freezing. Could I maybe take shelter with you this winter? Share your food and your fire?" The ant crossed her arms. "Oh, so now you regret doing nothing all summer and want me to give you the food I worked so hard for, while you were laughing at me? No. No, you should have thought about it before slacking off all summer," she said, angry. The grasshopper lowered his head. "I'm sorry for laughing at you. You were right. I was irresponsible, and now I suffer the consequences," he said, turning around and walking away, hugging himself as the freezing wind blew at him. Little icicles hanging from his antennae, the ant went back inside her warm shelter, closing the door behind her. She tried to go on with her night as usual, but couldn't stop thinking about the grasshopper for hours. "He really is freezing out there," she thought. "He has nothing to eat and nowhere to go. He might not survive the winter like this." She sat there and kept thinking, glancing at her window, watching the snow pile high over the ground. At last, her guilt grew too heavy on her. She put on her big scarf and went outside, searching for the grasshopper. She didn't take too long to find him, as he was getting so weak and couldn't walk that far away. She found him curled up on the ground, shaking, his body almost blue in color. She felt so bad for turning him away, and seeing him like this tug at her heartstrings. "Come with me," she said, helping him get up. They walked slowly towards her home, the grasshopper leaning on her, for he was so weak. He came into her home, and she took care of him until he grew stronger. And so he took shelter with her throughout the freezing cold winter, ate her food, and shared her fire. After a while, the winter was finally gone. "Thank you so much for everything, my dear friend. I'm very grateful," said the grasshopper to the ant. He left her house and went back to his life, but they remained very good friends. When summer came, not only did the grasshopper work hard to prepare for the next winter, he even saved extra food and gifted it to the ant as a thank you for her kindness. The end. Well, the grasshopper sure did learn his lesson, didn't he? Say, children, what do you think we could learn from this tale?
If you like our stories, click on the like button. And if you want to hear more stories, just subscribe to PixieBooks.
Oh, hello, children. Are you ready for a story? Oh, that's marvelous, because I'm ready to share one. Oh, here's the storybook. It looks like we're all ready. So, let's begin today's story. It's called A Christmas Carol. It was a snowy Christmas Eve, and everyone in the village was bursting with excitement. Soon there would be presents under the tree, stockings full of chocolate, and grandmothers telling you how much you've grown. But there was one man, old Ebenezer Scrooge, who didn't like Christmas at all. His neighbors felt sorry for him and tried to cheer him up. Children sang carols in front of his house. His relatives invited him for festive meals, but all he would say is, Oh, go away and leave me alone. So, in the end, he got his wish and found himself all alone on Christmas Eve in his big, dark house. When it was time for bed that night, he said to himself, "Oh, only one more day and Christmas will be over. Hurrah!" And then, with a smile, he fell asleep. Sometime during the night, bright flashing lights woke him up. He had never seen such a thing, and just as he was about to pull the covers over his head, he saw a sparkling figure coming closer and closer. "I am the ghost of Christmas past," the visitor said. "Rise up and follow me, and I will show you what has been." Scrooge wasn't afraid because he felt the ghost seemed friendly, so he got out of bed to see what would happen next. Suddenly, they were in the countryside. It was like a dream. "We can see others," the ghost explained, "but no one can see us." In front of them stood an old school. They entered and saw that it was empty for the holidays except for one boy who was alone in a cold, drafty room. Scrooge gasped, "Why, that's me, when I was a boy." Then he saw his sister run into the school. She flung her arms around the boy and cried, "I'm here to take you home for Christmas." As he watched the scene, Scrooge wiped a tear from his eye and said, "Oh, my sister had such a good heart." The ghost nodded. "Now you understand," he said. "That means my time with you has come to an end." The ghost's sparkles slowly faded until he was gone and Scrooge was back in his bed. He was woken from a deep sleep again that night. Someone was knocking on his window. He went to open it, and a figure swept into his room. "I am the ghost of Christmas present," she announced. She too seemed friendly in her long dress made of swirling snow. "I will show you what is," she added. Scrooge reached out to catch a snowflake, and just like that, they were watching over a family enjoying their Christmas dinner. There was a father, a mother, and lots of laughing children. Their house was much smaller and simpler than Scrooge's, but it was bright and warm. "That man works for me," said Scrooge. "He's lucky to have such a happy family." The ghost of Christmas present smiled. "I have something else to show you." Then, with the fluttering of her snowy dress, they flew outside to a narrow street. There, they saw a long line of people leading to the baker's shop. Some were laughing, some were singing, some were huddling together to warm up. "They're waiting to warm simple meals they've received in the baker's oven," the ghost explained. "Have they no homes?" Scrooge asked. The ghost shook her head. "No, but they have each other." Scrooge sighed and thought of his big, dark house. "Someone should offer them a warm place to stay," he said. The ghost nodded. "Now you understand." Then, spinning like a snow flurry, she rose up into the sky, and Scrooge was back in his cozy bed. A third time, he was woken in the middle of the night by a rumbling in the fireplace across from his bed. He sat up and looked toward it. "Santa Claus?" he asked. A slim, hooded figure emerged from the fireplace, brushing ashes off his dark robe. He shrugged as if to say, "Do I look like Santa Claus?" "Let me guess," said Scrooge. "You're the ghost of Christmas future. You will show me what will be." The dark figure nodded. This time, Scrooge felt scared, but he drummed up his courage and said, "I know you're here to help me be a better person. Can you speak to me?" But the ghost only pointed straight ahead and moved forward like a dark cloud. Scrooge understood that he was to follow. As soon as he did, they were on another village street. A group of people Scrooge recognized were chatting. One person mentioned a man who only cared about himself and wasn't nice to anyone. Another person agreed, yes, he doesn't share anything with anybody, not even at Christmas. Scrooge thought about what he'd heard. Could they be talking about me? He asked. He turned to the ghost, who slowly raised a bony finger, pointing at him. "Oh, no!" cried Scrooge. "Why do I only think of myself? Why do I never think of others?" The ghost tapped the side of his head. The message was clear. Now you understand. And with that, he spread out like a gray fog and vanished. Once again, Scrooge was back in bed, but this time he woke up to the rays of sunshine coming in the window. He looked around his bright room, then out the window to the snowy rooftops beyond. "It's Christmas morning," he cried with delight. Then he jumped up, rushed to his window, and looked out. He saw that same man that works for him walking towards his house in the street below. He opened his window and called out to him, "Can you help me? I'm having a big Christmas party at my house tonight. There will be lots of food and presents and warmth for all. Invite your family. And could you please tell everyone you see? I do it myself, but I'll be too busy making my home cheery and bright." The man let out a whoop and rushed off to share the news with everyone he saw. Being with others is so much better, Scrooge realized. I'm glad I have lots to share to make this the merriest Christmas our village has ever had. The end. Oh, what a touching story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a merry, warm Christmas. See you next time.
If you want me to tell you when I have a new story to tell, just click on the bell.